All right, everybody, we're live right here in Brazoria County, and I got Mr. Don Williams. And Don, tell us about, is this the plantation, Don?
Yes, it's a plantation. This is the Varner hog plantation. It is in Brazoria County in the West Columbia area up there.
This plantation, Varner hog, does not bear the patent name. There was Martin Varner, who was the first owner. He would have been one of Austin's old 300. And then it skips the Patton family era and goes to the Governor Hogg era. So it's, in that way, it erases the history of Patton Place or the Patton Plantation.
And so what we have to do is tell the story of the entire plantation and all those that helped to build the wealth and help to establish this great country of ours.
I have the feeling that in some way the truth it's trying to be told.
The story of Varner Hog Plantation begins with pioneer settler Martin Varner and his family. They brought enslaved people on the long journey to Texas.
I can just only imagine the emotions that they went through and the pain they felt and the loneliness of leaving all your loved ones behind and having to start over.
Although slavery had been abolished in the Northern American states and in Mexico, slavery existed in Texas as indentured servitude, a legal sleight of hand that helped convince slave owners to come to Texas. In 1834, Martin Varner sold his land to the Patton family from Kentucky. They arrived in Texas along with dozens of slaves who built the plantation home and so much more.
When people arrive here on the plantation, when they see the big plantation house, they think basically that's the plantation, that's all there was to it, but they don't realize that this was actually a booming agricultural complex with many buildings. We had the two-story sugar mill here. There were about 18 slave quarters across the way. There were several other workshops, including a blacksmith shop. There was a cotton gin and just a variety of buildings that went into shaping this into the agricultural place that it was.
For many of those who resided at the Varner Hog Plantation, the only record of their existence are the fingerprints left on the clay bricks used to build the slave quarters. Settlers poured into this area, establishing plantation and farms all along the Brazos River, which served as a lifeline to ports and markets outside the area. Brazoria County became one of the wealthiest and most populated areas in Texas. But by 1850, nearly 70% of the people living in Brazoria County were slaves.
Who's really doing all the work? Who's doing all the building? Who's doing all the production of wealth? So the sugar plantations, the cotton plantations, this entire slave system that was producing this wealth for Brazoria was being divided by a small few.
At the height of this plantation's sugar production, they were making about 245 barrels of sugar per season. The canes would be taken from the field over here, processed through this sugar mill, and then loaded into those 1,000-pound barrels called hogsheads. The hogsheads were then rolled down this little sort of natural chute here onto Varner Creek, loaded on the rafts, and then shipped off to market. And so that's how the plantation ran and gained the majority of its wealth here on site.
Over the years, around 100 men, women, and children were enslaved at the plantation. In the evenings, slaves returned home to their quarters across the creek from the big towns.
The slave people formed their own community within the subjugation, within the fact that they were controlled. They still had the power of community.
But one slave, Rachel, held a unique position separate from the rest of the slave community. While she was technically enslaved, the historical records reveal she lived with Columbus Patton, acting as his wife and mistress of this plantation. That all changed when Columbus Patton died. His family, angry at the terms of his will, blamed Rachel and coerced her to move to Ohio, where she stayed until after the Civil War. Patton Plantation was still in legal probate when Union troops arrived to announce that the days of slavery were over.
After hundreds of years and after decades of ancestors that had dealt with this bondage, I can imagine the jubilant atmosphere that it created for the enslaved people to finally know that their prayers have been answered and that they were finally free. You know, the first 10 years after the slaves were free was opportunity for them. They built schools, they formed communities, and in some instances they even attained elected positions. But that all came to a screeching halt, you know, when the Union soldiers were pulled out and life became very oppressive again.
African Americans were arrested in high numbers, earning long jail sentences for minor crimes. The old patent place, now owned by investors, earned a reputation for cruel treatment of convict workers. These prisoners were forced to work in a corrupt and violent system that has been called slavery by a different name.
And so the plantation then began to continue its labor force through the use of convicts. That was their answer to emancipation.
Now, right here, you say a barn?
Yes, this is the barn that houses the tools, the carriages, and the sleds that they have that they use on the plantation.
And we're talking about the slaves.
Yes.
And we're going to go in there and see some of the things that the slaves used to use on the plantation?
We sure will.
All right, but
as you can see here, some of the carriages that they use. And you also see one as a John Deere.
You mean John Deere was out doing them days?
Well, that was probably a good paint job that they used.
Oh yeah, but the name John Deere.
Yes.
Right, so he had been doing all this here for years then, and this is what we in the barn?
We're in one of the rooms of the barn that just happens to have the carriages.
And this is the carriage?
Yes, it is.
Wow, man, this was way before they had almost cars.
As you can see, it talks about this before the invention of the automobiles.
What did it say, Don?
It says, before the invention of the automobile, survey was the type of a doorless four-wheel horse-drawn carriage.
Oh, right,
Okay.
And this is the carriage.
Yep.
What were these the carriages?
And this was the Phantom.
And this is what they used to get
The
around
Phantom.
with.
It sure was.
Right, man, this was way before the cars even came into existence, way before Henry Ford never even thought about it.
And obviously this one right here would be for a single person.
Right, that's for a single person.
Yeah.
And this here one here would be
with
a family.
Well, family, and then also carry a couple of passengers.
Right, and then what they do, hook it up to a horse or a mule?
It was horse-drawn.
Wow, man, this is history. Now, what do we got over here, Don?
As you can see, some of the other tools that they use for planting.
Uh-huh. Wow. And all of this here, which slaves used all these tools?
Yes.
Wow.
And that's what they had back in those days.
Wow. All of this here is part of our history, y'all.
As you can see, some of the other smaller hand tools that they used.
And they used this for what? Picking cotton and sugar cane and all of that. Huh?
Everything that they had on the plantation.
Right. All of this is what the plantation workers, the slaves, would come and get their tools to go out and work in the field. Wow. Look at this stuff here, man. Wow. And this is the wagon where they would probably load the hay and stuff in the cotton,
well,
huh?
the sugar cane for this particular one here.
Oh, in other words, they were growing sugar cane out here too?
Yeah.
Huh? And cotton. Wow. And they was using that Brazoria, that Brazos River to import it, to export it, right?
Yes.
Wow.
And then the little small river that comes from here was not a river, it's a little stream.
Like a little creek, huh?
Yes.
And then it'll flow into the Brazos River.
There you go.
All right, look at here. And this is the barn. Wow. And these are some of the tools that they would use right here.
That is
the
correct.
rake and all of this stuff here. And all this here was probably for what, the sugar cane?
It was probably for both sugar cane as well as cotton and everything else that they had.
Right on through the barn here, Don, while we're here. And then all of this was part of the plantation. And we're going to see what a slave used to have their quarters at, Don?
Yes, it's on the other
As
side.
you can see, this is Varner Creek. And you can see where the Varner Creek would be rised up when it raised up, it'd be all the water be all the way up here, and this little creek would be able to ship all the cotton and sugar cane and everything they had on this plantation would go down Varner Creek, and Varner Creek would take it to the Brazos River, and the Brazos River would take it to the Gulf of Mexico. What we got here, Don?
Okay, what you see here is the ruins of the sugarcane mill that they had. Also, that all boom that you see there is just one of the rings that they had. That's ring number 4.
Wow. And this is where they was growing sugar canes and cotton all
yeah, well,
back
this is
over
where
here?
they was actually refining it at.
Oh, they were refining it over here.
Yes, they were.
And so they could ship it through that little creek, that Vernon Creek. Right, Don, you know, we're going down here on this plantation. Wow, all this was still part of the plantation. Wow, man, we're just gonna look around here and see how far we done came here on this plantation. Wow, look at this, look at this, look at this, y'all. Okay, now, Vernon, where are we going, Don, now?
We're going over here to where the ruins of the slave quarters is at.
All right, when you say the ruins of the slave quarters, what do that mean?
You're going to see the foundations there with the bricks that used to be the slave quarters. So you'll basically see what the houses, the size of the house, of the little huts that they slept in and everything else.
All right, the slave quarters.
Yes.
All of this is part of the plantation here.
Yep.
All of this back up in here, man. The slaves have to work all this.
Yeah.
All this property,
and there,
all back
you know,
out here.
there was sugar cane fields and everything else.
We had sugar cane fields, cotton fields out here. Wow, man, look at this here. Y'all, this is history. This is real history right here in Brazoria County. And we are so thankful to be able to have Don to help us with some of this black history. And then, you know, the good thing about it, Don, is that you know history of the whole state of Texas, man. So we still got a lot of work to do, Don.
Yes.
Wow. But would you say this is probably the granddaddy of it right here in Brazoria County? It
definitely is. It's certainly one of them. This is a good treasure trove.
Wow. Look at all of this here, man. And let's go over here. What do you say? This is the slave quarters?
It's the ruins of the slave quarters. As you can see, the little layout there, that's was what the foundations were.
Wow, just that small. Wow, man, wow. Look at this, look at this. And as we go here and we take a picture of here of the slave quarters.
What they used to look like.
And what they used to look like. Look at here. Ain't this something here? All of this here. 18 slave cabinets. One stood. What do that? Can you read that for me, Don?
18 slave cabinets once stood near this spot, okay, forming small communities separated from the big house across the creek. The slaves would have had their own small vegetation gardens and hundreds of small game, like rabbits. On this plantation, marriage was encouraged and slaves lived with their families. These quarters was always full of children.
Wow. And that's the creek that we seen over there, the Varner Creek.
Yes.
Oh, right. And what are those up there, Don, with those big old pots?
Those are camels that they talk about that was over top of the brick. Now you can see that they're on top of wood, but it was, you know, bricks back when they were using them.
All right.
And that's where they would boil the sugar to make the syrup.
Oh, wow. Ain't that something? And they were sending sugar all over the country. Wow, ain't that something? All right, everybody, this is where the master stay at. The owner of the plantation. This is where the owner of the plantation stayed, the master house, and right here would probably be the one, what they would call the house man. The house black Negro man would probably stay in this area up in here. And he would be closer to the master house, which is right here. And you can see this is part of the history here. And this is where the master would stay at. This is the master headquarters. Wow, ain't that something? And this is where the master would stay at. This is the master headquarters. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And this is where the master would stay at. And And we would take pictures of this, but right now we're gonna go here and walk around the master's house. And right here was where the slaves more than likely would stay at. They worked for the master. They wouldn't stay back there in the other headquarters where the other field Negroes would stay at.